Welcome to this segment of the web development training, Learn to Code. Today we're going to cover Bootstrap, and we'll talk about Bootstrap 4. First thing I want to show you is I had a question about how to set up your structure for your site. It's totally up to you how you want to do it, but just one idea here. I put together a file structure concept. So this would be like your root directory, the public HTML. In there, you're going to have, you may have an HTML, or an index.php file. Most systems are set up to call up the HTML first. If it's not there, look for the HTML. If it's not there, then go with the PHP. If you want to quickly shut your site down and it's a PHP, just throw up a real quick blank .html file. That doesn't mean that people can't still get to it, but if they're just putting in your URL, it'll load that blank HTML file. That'll kind of temporarily shut it down until you remove that file and allow it to filter down to the .php file. Underneath of that, I have the inc directory, which you might have things in there like your function files, your database connection files, any of your include type things like that. You'll understand that better when we get more into PHP and JavaScript. Then you may have an images directory. And I'm just kind of giving an example here: GIF image, JPEG image, PNG image, a JavaScript directory, a media directory. It could be broken down in any number of ways. Now, for this particular template that I'm showing you here, that's not the full template, but the way they broke it down, this is my training directory here. But the way that they broke it down is the guy actually put an assets directory. And then when you go in there, that's where he has his JavaScript, his images, fonts, his CSS, and then vendors. This would be like outside vendor, third-party scripts, like Font Awesome, for example. We'll be covering that tonight, touching a little bit on jQuery. He's got a couple of JS files in here. These are all from third party. But this is actually an LFMTE site. And if you look at this top part here, this is kind of how it's broken down. Admin directory, for example, there's some bonus pages. This is where I have my calendar. Here's an images directory, the include directory, that sort of thing. So what it is it really doesn't matter how you lay this out, as long as it makes sense. It should follow some kind of a standard. This is a page I put together showing you some of the various aspects of Bootstrap and some of the tools that you'll be able to use. And this is not all inclusive. But what I'm showing here, when you set up a Bootstrap website, it's divided into 12 different sections across from left to right. If you put that grid inside of a container, it's going to automatically afford you margins on the left and on the right. It's just automatic. Each one of these is 3 pieces of the grid wide. So you got 3, 6, 9, and 12. Down here, what I'm showing is when you put it outside of a container, the margins are no longer there. And again, this is 3, 6, 9, 12. Down here, what I did is I have it set up to where it's 8 and 4. So I have 8 on the left, 4 on the right. And one of the notes that I made here is notice the fluid images. So like these are all 650 by 250. And because it's image responsive, they'll squeeze down into that little area. And then here, when that area opens up and it's bigger because there's no margins, now that image is even bigger. And then when you come down here, I used a bigger image in this case, but you can see it just kind of, it wants to fill up that whole section there, only because of the way it's laid out. I don't have any sizing, any of that. But the other thing that I wanted to show you is when I grab the edge and move this screen in to simulate, pseudo simulate the smaller screen, you're going to notice, especially with these images here, notice how they shrink down as the screen gets smaller. And you'll also notice here's a breakpoint where that kind of snaps and makes each section even smaller, even though it's still, each one is 3 in the grid. And like I said, I'll show you that in just a minute. Some of the other things about each one of these boxes, this is what's called a card, which is new in Bootstrap 4. Each one of these is considered a card. So like a few weeks back when we were talking about divs, you're still going to use divs and that sort of thing, but this is something new that'll help you lay things out. You have the card header, the card body, and the card footer. So this part here would be the header. This and this is in the body, and then this will be in the footer. And then I'm just showing across some different buttons. And then I'm just showing here, this is inverse, and I had to change the font color actually to get that to show up white, but all I did was use the inverse command to get that black bar set. And this is going to be what the default is going to be. So let's just go in and we'll take a look at this Bootstrap page. This will take you to the Bootstrap website. And it's showing you here quick start. And this is all I did on here is I used that template to get me started. And then I just kind of tweaked it from there. But what it's showing you here is you want to call out the Bootstrap CSS. And you can see here it's version 4, alpha 6. They have it in their CSS directory. And it's called bootstrap.min.css. Now the CDN, Content Delivery Network, you can link directly to this. You don't have to, you can download it, but you don't have to. You can link directly to it. One of the benefits of downloading directly is if something happens and this site goes down or you're working locally and you lose your internet connection, you're not going to be able to connect directly to this because it's out on the web. Whereas if you downloaded it and had it locally on your machine, you could still kind of mess with it. Once you get, you start getting into like some of the jQuery, it may not work right just out of the gate on your local machine. So you may actually have to put it up on the web or start a server on your local machine. This is what you would need towards the top, and then you would put this down towards the bottom. And you'll see that here in this starter template. We're starting out with our exclamation point doc type HTML, and then we're opening our HTML tag here. We're closing it here. Open the head here, close it here, and then we're starting now to get into the meta tags. I believe that we covered the UTF-8 meta tag in a previous lesson, but one thing we haven't talked about is this here. That sets you up for mobile devices and different size screens, and you can look this up to see exactly what each one of these means. But this is telling you to start it at 100%, but don't shrink it to fit the screen. So here you have the Bootstrap CSS line, and you're going to link that, call it a style sheet, and then here's your href is going to be this, and that goes up in the head. And then here for the body, they're showing just an H1 with hello world, and then down below you have your jQuery. We'll get into jQuery as we progress further into the topic of web development. But you need to load these jQuery first, then what's called Tether, and then Bootstrap JS. There's also inconsistencies between browsers. You can use some of these selectors when you're doing certain things to deal with the WebKit, which is Google and Safari. Mac uses Safari. And then Mozilla is going to be Firefox. Another thing they're talking about here, for improved cross-browser rendering, we use normalize to correct small inconsistencies across browsers and devices. And then they mean, when they say we, they mean Twitter Bootstrap further builds on that with what they call reboot. All this is a CSS file for your browser sets it a certain way, so you have a base starting point for your web page. So you could get this normalized CSS and include that in if you like. Next, we'll talk about the Bootstrap grid system. And I'll click on this. It'll bring us right on over to that page. Bootstrap includes a responsive mobile-first fluid grid system. Now, let me explain mobile first. What they're talking about there is when you're developing, you develop for mobile devices first, and then go bigger, bigger, bigger. Because it's more difficult to start large, to start with a web page on your desktop and then try to shrink everything down and what's going to move where and what's going to be removed. To me, it's easier to start on a mobile device. So in other words, you don't necessarily need a mobile device. Google Chrome has a setting where you can click and pick different devices, like what would it look on an iPhone? What would it look on an iPad? What would it look on a Nexus? What would it look on? You pick it. And then you can also set your own screen sizes and that sort of thing. It's not 100%, but it's pretty doggone close. A lot of times what I'll do, I'll just drag this all the way over, sometimes even up. Sometimes even up. So maybe like roughly right there would be a phone. And then as I'm building, I'll kind of start dragging this over to see where the breakpoints are. And by breakpoints, I mean when certain columns act a certain way. You can kind of see this drop down and notice this menu on the right-hand side. Once I get to this point, it disappears. It may have gone into a hamburger menu at the top. I haven't really investigated to see exactly where it's gone, but that'll kind of give you an idea what I'm talking about by breakpoints. So whatever that happens to be, let's say it's an iPad, and when it breaks, that disappears. So that's what I mean. If you start from here and you're trying to squeeze in that little menu and you're trying to do all this stuff, you're better off doing all this stuff than make your screen a little bit bigger and say, okay, where do I want my breakpoint to be? I want it to be right there. The way that you set that is you'll see throughout a Bootstrap document little codes like this, XS, MD, L, G, that sort of thing. So this would be like extra small, medium, large. So XS, MD, LG, and there's others as well. In your CSS, you could set up your media queries. So it's saying on here, you have a small screen, medium screen, large screen, and you could set your CSS for each one of those. So you might be developing and you say, okay, I don't want this image to be on a small screen. So let's give it a certain ID or a certain class and let's hide it until it gets to, say, a middle size. And then if it's a middle size, I only want it to be this big. So you would set your parameters there of how you want it to look on a medium-sized screen, and then again on a large-sized screen. So, okay, I can take up the whole top with a huge image or whatever the case may be. Some of your grid options is shown here. Actually, let me get a better picture down here first. You can see here, this is 12 cells going across the screen. This is the way I have that one part, that bottom part I showed you set up, was 8 on the left and 4 on the right. Here's one example that's just showing split at 4, 4, and 4, and one just splitting the screen in half, doing a 6 and a 6. You can set these up pretty much any way that you want, as long as the math comes out to be 12. And the way that you do that is you start with a row, and then put in whatever the this is showing here the column MD1. That's all these. And then this part here is how you would do this. This is just showing on a medium screen and above. Let's make it look like that. And then this 4, 4, and 4 is this one, and 6 and 6 is this one. So that's how you would set up that grid. And then it's just showing you different layouts. Now I'm going to have this on the website, maxscape.com. It's going to be under training once I get the video done. I'll put the this document there so that you don't have to go searching for any of these. You can just click on the buttons like I am, and it'll take you right to that page. I may also zip up this file. Right now I'm just calling it bootstrap.html, but I might zip it up so you can download it. So if you wanted to pick it apart, another way to pick it apart, depending on the browser that you're using, they are very similar. I'm using Safari right now, but I right click, show page source. And when that comes up, there we go. Now it's showing the layout. This is the code behind what you're seeing here. And you can do that pretty much. There's a way that you can disable it through JavaScript and that sort of thing so people can't right click and so on and so forth. But on most web pages, you can right click and get them. Next thing I want to cover is Font Awesome. And this is not the only glyph icon, but this is what you would call a glyph icon. This is an example one, this thumbs up here. Easily dress up your site with awesome icons. What I'm doing here, I want to point this out, is I'm just showing you what it took to make this button look like that. That is it. When I set up a button, it's button, and then the class equals BTN, BTN-warning. That's all I had to do to change the color. Danger, and then primary. And what it doesn't show up quite well on here because I have a lot of wording in here, but button block, if you set it to button block, it's going to end up stretching across the entire width. An average button, you're just going to have whatever your text is, a little bit of margin on the left and right. So let's go over to Font Awesome. This is another website, same thing. You can download it or you can link to it. There are some examples of how to set that up. I just clicked on this link here. It says examples, and it's just showing you. After you get up and running, you can place Font Awesome icons just about anywhere with the I tag. Some examples are used from the Bootstrap documentation. And then it's showing you here. I think the thumb, I think I either put in 3 times or 4 times. But if you just put in, here it's giving an example here, the FA camera retro FA-LG is going to give you this little guy right here. And then the ×2, ×3, ×4. They also have animated icons. You can see here, like it's showing you use it as a bullet. And the way they're doing that is they're putting this is what that one is called. And you're just putting a spin on it. Come down a little bit further and it's showing you even more. Now, when I first was developing this, I had this icon instead of that thumbs up icon. And I thought, well, depending on how long I'm on this screen, it might get annoying or it might make people dizzy. And so I decided with the thumbs up. Then it's showing you here that you could take any icon and rotate it, 90, 180, 270, put it horizontal, flip it horizontal, flip it vertical. So there's all kind of things you can do. Just when you get to the Font Awesome site, just look at the different examples. And then if you click on icons, it's going to show you. And all I'm doing here is just clicking my Control+ to make these a little bit bigger. But there's all kind of them. And if you click on one, then it's going to show you the different sizes and how to get it. So you would just use, if you wanted the snowflake, You use that, and then depending on the side you try, it probably is going to come out to be this way. And then you just need to come back over here and say, now, how did I get that, make that bigger again? Let's see. Oh, it's FA-5X. It's going to make it big. So that's just kind of a brief how you would use that. This is good if you want to add little icons quickly to your site. You can download it, or you can link to it. Google Fonts. I know I touched on this last week about just your fonts and then how you can expand that. Because when you're dealing with a font, if you pick a font that you think looks awesome, and you want to use that font, I may not have it on my computer, so it's going to look different. And that's why you want to put that when you set it up through your CSS, you want to list what different font families that will work and that will work well together. Another thing you can do is go to Google Font, and then you can pick what kind of font you want. There's tons of them. So let's just say if I wanted this one, I'm going to click on that. It's going to show me what it looks like, all the different characters that are available. And then I can pick it and download it, or I can link to it. So I'm going to come here and hit select this font. It's going to pop up with a little dealio down here. I clicked on that, and now it's going to show me how I link to that, and then what the font family is. This is how I would link my website to that particular font, and then this, when I'll go to use it in my CSS, this is how I'm going to call it out. So load it, call it. That's really about it for that. You can select multiple fonts, and like I said, you could download them. But if you're going to download them to your computer, you need to upload them to your server. So like on the example of this, when I came in here, this person who built that template, they have all their fonts listed here, and they're being called out within the document in the CSS. So these are like the different types. You can read about these, the WOFF2, the WOFF, the SVG, the TTF, the EOT. These are different formats because you need to make different formats available for different browsers. And then down here, I have some more information on cards. So if you click on that button, it's going to take you down and talk about the cards themselves. So when you're doing your layout and it's showing you here, you're going to call out the class of card, and they're showing here this is just the inline styling. You probably want to do this on your style sheet, and then the image class, and then the card block, and within the card block is a card title. Then there's the card text, and then they're showing a button. And it's showing different content types, so you can just read through this documentation and learn a little bit more. Remember, this Bootstrap 4, everything we're doing today. Showing you here different things, different layouts, different ways. Like here it's showing a list item, what it would look like with this particular setup. So you're using an unordered list, class of list group, and then list group item, list group item, list group item. It's a little bit different than your standard LI opening and closing. They're just adding a class to that. Take a moment once I make this available to you to take a look at some of this stuff as far as the helping you lay out your site. Now, last week we discussed forms, and I showed you how to lay out a form using tables. So that's basically the old way. You can still do it. Set it up through tables, but if you want to use Bootstrap and make that table a bit more responsive, you could set it up without doing tables. This page will show you everything about forms that you need to know when it comes to Bootstrap. Showing you some of the form controls. If you remember, we use the placeholder to get this. When you start typing, it's going to go away. Your password is going to just give you dots. Here's a drop down. A multi-select, so you could pick one, hold down the shift key and pick all of them, or hold down the control key and just pick the ones that you want. Text area, just punch in, type in whatever. File input, this is where if you click this, a dialog box is going to come down and show you your computer, and then you can select a file to upload or whatever. Radio buttons, I'm sure you guys have probably seen these in forms before. Check boxes, and then it's showing a submit button. And this is showing you how to lay that out. When the biggest thing I want to point out to you is that you're going to have a div with a class of form group. Then you're going to have another tag called label. Your label is going to be for, as in, what's it for? In this case, example input email 1, email address. So that's this. That's your label. Coming up is going to be the input box. So you have the tag of input. Type is email. Class is going to be a form control. The ID, they just called it this. And then it says area described by. Just another, let me get down here to the scroll bar. Scroll over. Back up to it. And then your placeholder. Now the text muted here, what that's going to do is cause that text to be just a little bit gray. So like it shows here, we'll never share your email with anyone else. So instead of trying to figure out, okay, what's the font color for light gray, you don't even need to do that. If you're satisfied with that color, you just put text muted. Just each one, like with the file upload, a type of file, type of radio for the radio buttons, a type of check for the check box, that sort of thing. But as you can see, not one table element, not one TD, not one TR, not one TH. Just opening your form and start using your divs, your labels, your inputs. And then you can just read down through, like here, you can set up where it's going to show them how they want it. So if you set it up as a telephone, it's going to give you that layout. A password's going to give you the dots. Only numbers. They're showing a little on the side, plus and minus. And that's it. So you guys can kind of read on your own about this if you have questions. Oh, I just scrolled by here, something I wanted to talk about right here. So instead of having your form laid out like that, you can do an inline form, which will put your elements side by side, your elements of the form side by side. That's called an inline form. Like here you have email, password, click a button. So they don't have to be on top of each other. Showing here disabled input, disabled select. Now, as you're building your website, you may have seen this before, the lorem ipsum. What that is just filler text. So that if you're say, okay, I want to have 100 words at least in this box, or I want to have 3 short paragraphs or 3 short lines or whatever. I know that's what I want. I just don't know what it is right now. Instead of just typing in a bunch of gibberish on your own, you can go to this site. In this case, it's called Blind Text. And you can pick what you want. If you want the lorem ipsum, it really doesn't matter. It just, most people just use the lorem ipsum. And over here, I could put in that I just want 100 words or 100 characters. So let's go with words, and we'll go with, say, 200. And I might want this to be in 3 different paragraphs. Let's make it 4. So this will kind of help you set up and go, okay, I want that. That looks about right. Maybe it's a little bit too big. So let's make it 150. And I still want to have 4 paragraphs. What you can also do is display the P tags, and it automatically puts them in here for you. Select all, copy it, go back over to your document that you're building and paste it. That's it. Simple as that. So for your filler, or as they call it, the dummy text generator. And no, it's not text for dummies. Something similar where I'm getting all these images from is from a site called Placeholder. So if you know that you're going to want an image that's 468 by 60, 125 by 125, whatever the dimensions are, you could just come over here to Placeholder, and it's going to give you an example of what you want, what you can use here. So all you need to do is copy this and paste it, and then go back and change. So if you want it to be 125 by 125, just change this last part here, and that'll give you the proper size image. Or it's shown here. You can also use it in your code like this, which is how you definitely want to use it. But if you already have some of these set up like I did, I just kind of put a bunch of them in, then I went back and changed them to whatever size I wanted. Some of the other things you can do, how I got this look instead of the default, I just decided to do a black and a green. So I came over here to color. And in my case, since it's a 650 by whatever, it would say HTTP placeholder / 650 by whatever, 650x 350, I think it is, 250, whatever, / the color for black for the background and the color for green for the foreground. And that's all there is to that. So you have your text generator here, and you have your image placeholder here. 650 by 250 is what I was trying to say. Coming back here, as I showed you outside a container versus inside of a container, I put this inside of another container to just trying to kind of show you the contrast between the top in the container, out of the container, in the container. And as I mentioned earlier, this is 8 on the left and 4 on the right. We'll open up the code here in a bit, and I'll show you what that's all about. This is showing that this has margins. As I said, margin on the left, margin on the right. And I'm not using any cards except for one exception. And I'll show you that in a minute. What I wanted to show you here is a modal. Some people might call this a pop-up. Or when you click something or you do something, that you're going to get something like that. My promo calendar has that. There's a blue bar, and it's saying I'm going to be doing a promotion with this particular website. You click on that, it'll come up with something similar, and it'll show the website, and then what the parameters, what your requirements are, how many you need to surf, and how much you're going to earn for that. Just a little X in the corner. This is all done with Bootstrap. Nothing really that fancy. You can also have a video. Notice I closed it, it keeps playing. Give that a second to run out. And then also you can put a form. In this case, I just have a username. I accidentally hit the button. I hit enter by accident as I was banging on the keyboard. Username, password, and then click. Some more examples. We can kind of start at the top here. I just had that going straight over to the example mode. But start at the top and just kind of work your way down. It's telling you how it works. Some examples. And each one of these has its own live demo. So if you click on it, it'll show you, what does this mean? Click on it and it'll tell you. You can have multiple buttons, close it, save your changes, whatever. So like in this case, you could probably type into this box maybe. Maybe that's what they're trying to show you. I don't know, I didn't read. Scrolling long text, so it doesn't have to fit the screen. It can be much longer than what your screen is. Tooltips and popovers is kind of cool. It says like here, this button triggers a popover. So you can have an explanation. So let's say if there's something on your site that you want to explain to people, you can actually set up a little mock-up inside of here and then put different tooltips. Here it's showing you tooltips in a modal, this link or that link, and have tooltips on hover. Yes, I kind of ran into this before, where just once I did the tooltip, it wasn't quite working right. I don't know if it's because I'm on Safari or what, but you can also use Bootstrap inside of the modal. So you could set it up. You can see here the MD4, and this is what I was talking about before about the column MD4 with the offset. That's how you'd write that out. And then it's showing you here column MD4, column MD4 offset, MD3, offset 3. You can have the grid within the grid. That's showing you level 1, level 2. So you can break it down even further. The only thing I can tell you is as you're learning, just experiment. Experiment as much as you can and learn. That's where you're going to learn. Just try things. And there's some things here like, and when I said that it has no cards with the exception, this is another example of a card. This is just, as I put here, with the right styling, a card can also look like this. Now let me call up this document and we'll just kind of run through this fairly quickly, show you a couple of things. So that's probably what we're just looking at. Yeah, has margins, no cards. This is actually that card. And I'm giving it a class of my card. I'm setting the margin top to 5%. And what that does is that just kind of drops. It gives me a margin. If I didn't have that, I could use a blank return or a P or whatever to get that spacing. But I wanted to have a little more control over it. And because of the responsiveness, as this screen changes size, your percentages are going to allow that movement. Whereas if you're putting hard pixels, it won't. So we'll scroll back up to the top here because you're going to see user card image, user card content. This stuff is all starting right here. So I had a class of my card. I'm making the height 100% of the div. I want the user card image to have a padding of 15 pixels, and I'm going to display it as a table cell. So I'm laying it out like a table, but not using the table tags. And I want to align it vertically in the middle. Some of the content, same thing. I'm going to display it as a table cell, make the height 100%, vertical alignment to the middle. Set my border around the image, set my border around the content. And then this is just some of the other things that I did to make that page layout the way that you saw it. Now here, the way that I got that font awesome is I created a class called FA-center. I'm displaying it as an inline block. The block meaning it's going to extend the width of that div. And I want it to be vertically aligned in the middle. And I think I also have I think that I added a center to it as well somewhere. I might have done it inline. But as you can see here, I'm starting out with my doc type. HTML opening the head, setting up the meta. And this is a comment in HTML. You put the greater or the less than sign, exclamation point, 2 dashes, put whatever you're going to put, and then close it with 2 dashes and the greater than. Now it can look like this. You don't have to have those spaces in there, but you do need exclamation point and 2, and then 2 and close. It could be multiple lines. So like if I took this, the ending tag portion, and put it down here, this is not going to be used. It's now commented out. So let me undo that. Here's where I'm calling font awesome, and here's how I'm calling the Google font. Scroll down past this. This should be in a style sheet, but rather than bounce back and forth, there's enough bouncing already. You can see here I have it under my styles.css, but I decided to go ahead and shut that off so that I could show it to you here. But as I'm putting here, be sure to put your custom style sheets below the Bootstrap CSS link. So here's the Bootstrap, as long as it's below it, it's going to call up your Bootstrap, and then it's going to look at your whatever you have for your custom styling in that order. And in this case, if I had this active and it was different, it's going to look at the Bootstrap styling first, then look here, then look here. And then if I have any inline, it's going to look there. So just kind of consider it a chain of command or a hierarchy. One of the things you may have noticed in the modals was a background image, and the way that you set up a background image for a div or whatever the case may be, in most cases it's going to be background-image URL and then the URL to the image itself. No repeat means if it was, let's say it was a image that was 100 by 100, it's going to start in the upper left-hand corner and repeat all the way across, all the way across, all the way across, all the way across, all the way across until it gets to the bottom of that document. So I wanted it to be a no repeat, which means it's only going to pop up one time in that div. And then I want it to be covered. There's certain ways you can set your background size. You can set it by percentage. You can set it by contain. You can set it by cover. Just go to W3 Schools if you're interested in learning more about the background size. And background images, just Google it, and it should take you to W3 Schools and right over there. And then to set up the Bootstrap document, after you get past the closing head tag and into the body, you want to open a div class, call it content. All your content is going to go here. So down at the bottom of this document, just before I get into the call outs for jQuery, Tether, and Bootstrap, the last div is going to be all of this content within that page. And then I'm going to have a container. And again, I'm dropping it down 5%. Here we are. I'm inside a container, and I'm dropping it down 5%. And then I'm opening a row. and I want it to be the entire width, so I'm going to put it to 12. Background faded text center. You can just use the class, the Bootstrap class of text center, and it will automatically center that text. And background faded is just going to give you that look. So you can see it automatically centered everything, and it just gave me a nice little light gray background. In Bootstrap 3, this is called well. So you would use well, W-E-L-L. And I'm closing my div, which is this div here. And then I'm going to close my row, closing that here. Now I'm going to start another row. And as I said, all of these are threes. So 3, 6, 9, 12. And then I closed all that off and opened another row of 12. Background faded, text center, margin top 2%. So I just wanted to drop it down a little bit. And then here's the example of the full margin, full width with no margins. So what's missing? It's because I don't have a container. If I added container to that, then it would take those, it would add the margins. And no container, then I'm opening another one with a container. Background faded, text center. Here's my column 8 and my column 4. So that was just all the stuff that was on the left and all the stuff that was on the right. Let me show you these buttons. I used hrefs for these. BTN. Button. See, these are all the different buttons. Bootstrap Grid, Font Awesome, Google Fonts. And look for Modal. There we go. Here's how I called out the Modal buttons. That's all I had to do. Span, class, button, whatever I wanted to use, whatever type of button will set the color. I was trying something here that didn't quite work, button inverse, which should have swapped out the colors, but didn't work. So I have to go back and take a look and see why. Data toggle is going to be modal. Data target, my image modal. Data toggle modal. Data target, my video modal. And that's just a label on the button. Data toggle modal. Data target, my form modal. This number sign here, if I can grab that, you can see where my cursor is. That number sign before each one signifies that it's an ID. So if I come down here and I go, my image modal, I should be able to find one with an ID of my image modal. So when I click that button, it's going to open this modal. Here's the header, the title, the button. This is the button for closing. That's data dismiss equals modal. The label is close. But in this case, I'm just using ampersand times and then semicolon, which is going to give me the X. So that's going to translate as that. Here was in the modal body, I had an image. And then the modal footer, it was just taking me to that particular page using a button. My video modal, that's going to open this one. Same thing. The only difference is I added the iframe with the YouTube and then also some CSS from the top. That was just to kind of get the centering and then the modal footer. And here, my form modal. So up above where we were looking earlier at the 3 buttons, the one-handed ID of my form modal. When I click that button, this is going to open up. So you can see here, open form, inside of the modal, actual form, form group, label, input, form group, label, input, and my button. So it's going to give my username, password with the input. And then the modal footer with another button. And then this is the bottom of the document, as I was showing you here. This is something else I was kind of doing with the modal, but that really shouldn't even be there right now. That's getting a little too deep. And that is it. So like I said, go to maxscape.com